Welcome back to True Echo, where real courage, quiet strength, and justice come to life through the most powerful stories you'll ever hear. Today's story will leave you breathless with rage, and inspired by one woman's silent storm. A wealthy showroom manager tries to humiliate a black woman wearing a hoodie. He doesn't realize, she's the CEO who owns every chair, chandelier, and paycheck in that building. This isn't just about race. It's about power. And the moment you think someone is beneath you, remember, they might be standing on top of everything you've ever built. Let's dive into the story. The crystal pendant lights in Nordcrest interiors cast prismatic beams across polished walnut floors, making the showroom feel like a cathedral of luxury. Everything from the velvet walls to the curated vases and brass-inlaid furniture whispered wealth, taste, and exclusivity. To most, this place was a temple of elegance. But to Talia Monroe, it was a test site. And the staff? Unknowing participants in a final audit of character. She walked in quietly, dressed in clothes that told a different story. A faded hoodie, frayed jeans, and sneakers that had known many miles. She didn't come to be seen. She came to observe. She moved past velvet chairs and Italian leather sofas, her fingers brushing the grain of a walnut reading chair she'd once helped redesign during a midnight call with a craftsman in Florence. But no one recognized her, not because she was unfamiliar, but because they never cared to look. At the front desk, Sophie barely glanced up. Talia stood still, waited, gave space. When the receptionist finally raised her eyes, she did it with the expression of someone finding lint on silk. "If you're looking for our catalog," Sophie said, her tone tight with practiced dismissiveness, "it's online." Talia's voice was even. "Actually, I wanted to see the Mahler reading chairs. Walnut finish, ideally. Do you have one on the floor?" Sophie's eyes narrowed, an involuntary twitch of surprise or suspicion. "Those start at $8,000, she replied, then added with an insincere smile, "We usually recommend something more accessible at our outlet branch." And that was when Elliot Crane arrived. He didn't ask. He didn't assess. He didn't even pretend to mask his disdain. "Get her out," he barked. "Now." His voice was sharp, designed to humiliate. His words sliced the air, his eyes filled with superiority. Customers froze mid-conversation. Staff stiffened, not in protest, but in silent consent. Talia didn't move. She looked at him with the calm of a surgeon before a cut. "You have no idea what you've just done." But Elliot wasn't done either. "I don't care what sob story you've rehearsed. You don't belong here." And so she left, not because he had the power to push her out, but because she had something greater, the patience to come back and tear the house down from within. The streets of Manhattan swallowed her steps as Talia walked away from the Nordcrest showroom, calm on the outside but pulsing with calculated fury beneath the surface. The cold wind needled through her hoodie, but she barely noticed. Her fingers wrapped around her phone with quiet purpose as she tapped out a single message. "It's worse than we thought. Prep Protocol 7. She didn't need to explain. Her executive team would know what to do. This wasn't just a corporate failure, it was a cultural rot, and she wouldn't patch it. She would cut it out by the root. 3 months earlier, Monroe Atelier, her luxury lifestyle and design conglomerate, had quietly acquired Nordcrest Interiors in an all-cash deal. It was a strategic power play. Nordcrest was floundering under archaic leadership but still held enough prestige to be salvaged. For Talia, it was personal. Nordcrest had once rejected her own designs for being too urban, back when she was a struggling consultant with sketches drawn in the margins of her rent bills. Now she owned them. Every location. Every paycheck. Every floor tile. But ownership, she knew, meant responsibility. Reports had trickled in for weeks, customers of color being ignored, employees of certain backgrounds getting passed over for promotions, a general air of gatekeeping. A Nordcrest branch manager had allegedly suggested that, "Some clients just aren't our clientele." Talia didn't need to hear more. She didn't want a spreadsheet. She wanted truth. And the only way to get that was to walk into the fire herself. So she dressed in memory. Not disguise, memory. Back in her brownstone, she swapped the hoodie for a fitted black blazer and crisp ivory blouse. She twisted her hair into a sleek bun, put on her signature burgundy lipstick, and stepped into crimson heels that had walked across red carpets and Senate floors alike. She wasn't coming back for vengeance. She was coming to reclaim. When the glass doors of Nordcrest opened a second time that day, no one looked up at first. Not until the cadence of her heels, measured, elegant, lethal, pierced the ambient jazz music like a metronome of judgment. She didn't browse this time. She didn't linger. She moved with precision, straight to the reception desk. Sophie looked up and froze. Her lips parted in recognition, confusion giving way to dread. "I'd like to speak with your regional director," Talia said, her voice smooth as polished oak. "Let him know that Talia Monroe is here." Across the room, Elliot noticed the shift in energy. He spotted her, different now, impossibly confident, and he smirked. "Oh, it's you again," he sneered, strolling over. "Guess a quick change and some lipstick makes you feel more qualified, huh?" She didn't even look at him. "You think dressing up gets you inside a place like this?" he continued, louder this time, drawing attention. And then, the back office door slammed open. Marcus Santiago, regional director of Nordcrest Interiors, emerged in a panic, tie askew, eyes wild. His gaze landed on Talia, and his breath caught like a man staring down a tidal wave. Miss Monroe." His voice cracked under the weight of sudden recognition. Silence rippled outward like a detonation. Customers stared. Employees stiffened. Elliot blinked. "Wait, her," he scoffed. "She's the—" No, you're not serious." "This troublemaker." Marcus turned slowly, his voice nearly inaudible. "Elliot. Stop." But it was too late. The world had already shifted. Talia finally turned to face him, her voice like velvet over steel. "I'm not a troublemaker, Mr. Crane." She placed a business card on the counter with a deliberate tap. "Talia Monroe. Chief Executive Officer. Monroe Atelier Group. Nordcrest Interiors." A silence thicker than air settled over the room. "I'm the woman who signs your paychecks." The fallout was instant. An intern dropped a tray. Sophie went pale. Elliot's mouth opened, but no sound came. And Talia? She didn't smirk. She didn't gloat. She simply turned to Marcus and said, "Call your staff. We're not done." Within 10 minutes, every staff member at the flagship Nordcrest showroom stood in a semicircle near the center display, surrounded by luxury sectionals and handwoven rugs. The customers had been politely escorted to the far end of the showroom or encouraged to browse quietly. Attention hung in the air like smoke before a storm. Talia Monroe stood at the front of the room, not behind a podium, not raised on a stage, but grounded, eye level with the people who had shown her just how broken the system had become. Her posture was regal, shoulders square, hands clasped calmly at her waist. Her silence alone commanded more respect than Elliot Crane's barking ever had. Marcus Santiago stepped forward, clearly rattled. "All associates and floor managers are now present," he said. "Ms. Monroe, the floor is yours." She nodded once, then pulled a sleek black tablet from her tote. One tap. The showroom lights dimmed slightly as a projection screen on the far wall came to life. No one had been told what they were about to see. But the first frame answered the question. Security footage. Time-stamped. Angle after angle. It began with Talia's entrance in her hoodie and sneakers. She was barely acknowledged. 3 different employees glanced her way, saw her, and turned their backs. The video cut to her standing near the front counter, waiting. 10 seconds. 20. 30. Sophie's frosty interaction played next, cold, dismissive, every word like a gate slammed shut. When the recording reached the part where Elliot arrived and barked, "Get her out now," the entire room flinched. Then came the moment security advanced, clearly uncomfortable but obedient. Talia, dignified and composed, left on her own terms. And just when the silence in the showroom couldn't stretch any tighter, the final clip began. A white man, about 50, dressed in a pinstripe suit, entered the showroom not 10 minutes after Talia had left. He was greeted instantly, smiling faces, handshakes, sparkling water offered without request. When he asked about the Mahler reading chairs, the same ones Talia had asked to see, Sophie eagerly escorted him to the private viewing salon with samples already in hand. The footage ended. The screen went black. But the truth had been illuminated with painful clarity. Talia didn't speak for several seconds. Then, she looked up and scanned the room. "This," she said, "is not a training issue. This is a character issue. A culture issue." Her voice was low, but the kind of low that felt like the ocean, still on the surface, thunder beneath. Discrimination is rarely loud. Most often, it's in the silence. The glances. The tone. The suggestion that someone doesn't belong. That someone's money isn't clean enough to touch your brand. She turned slowly toward Elliot. And cultures like this don't form by accident. They're modeled. Encouraged. Reinforced. Elliot took a slow step back. "Ms. Monroe, if I had known who you were." She held up a single hand. He stopped mid-sentence. "That's exactly the problem. Your respect is conditional. Your decency is reactive. You don't see people until you're forced to." She turned to Marcus. "Mr. Santiago?" He cleared his throat. "Effective immediately. Elliot Crane is terminated. He will be escorted off the premises and permanently barred from employment within the Monroe Atelier Group." The silence exploded into quiet murmurs and a few gasps. Sophie's eyes welled. Elliot's face drained of color. "You can't do this," he croaked, voice dry. "I already have," Talia said. He turned to Marcus, then to the rest of the staff, waiting for someone, anyone, to object. No one did. Because they all knew. They had all seen. As security moved to escort Elliot out, Talia turned to Sophie. "You are suspended, pending full review. Not only for your treatment of me, but for every customer whose name will uncover in the coming days." Then her eyes landed on Travis, the security guard. "You put hands on a woman who did nothing wrong," she said. "You'll step away from your duties and report to HR for disciplinary review. And you're lucky I'm not filing a civil complaint." Travis bowed his head, the guilt already written in his posture. Talia turned back to the full team. Her tone shifted, not softer, but steadier. "When you choose to discriminate," she said, "you also choose to shorten your own future. That is a decision no one else makes for you." There was nothing performative in her delivery. No raised voice. No theatrical declarations. Just truth. But what happened next proved that she hadn't returned to destroy Nordcrest. She had returned to transform it. The following morning, the glittering windows of Nordcrest Interiors remained shuttered. The usual flow of polished customers sipping lattes outside and murmuring over fabric swatches was nowhere in sight. Instead, a bold notice was taped to the glass. "Closed today for internal realignment, leadership present." Inside, every employee from sales to warehouse sat on temporary chairs, arranged in rows on the showroom floor, now stripped of its usual mystique. The chandeliers still sparkled, but their glamour felt dimmed, more like watchful eyes than ornaments. At the front stood Talia Monroe, not in her black blazer, but in a soft navy sweater and tailored slacks. No makeup. No pretense. Just presence. She waited as the room settled, then took a deep breath. "There's a reason I didn't shut this branch down," she began. Her voice filled the space, not with volume, but with gravity. It's not because what happened was minor. It wasn't. It was systemic. It was rooted. Her gaze swept over the rows of familiar and unfamiliar faces. But systems can be rewritten, she continued, and culture can be rebuilt, if we're willing to do the work. Behind her, the monitors lit up. A fresh rollout plan appeared in sleek animations, modern, precise, deliberate. Training 360, Human-Centered Service Initiative. Effective immediately, she said, every employee, from reception to regional management, will undergo a 6-month mandatory equity immersion program. Not designed by HR. Not written in a boardroom. But built by professionals who specialize in bias training, emotional intelligence, and accountability. No one cheered. No one clapped. But eyes widened, jaws tensed. Performance reviews will now include fairness metrics, she said. Not just, did you sell the sofa, but, did you treat every customer like they belonged in that room? Gasps came quietly. Some shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Every interaction will be eligible for anonymous review, she added. Customer feedback won't just be suggestions anymore, it'll be data. Data that shapes promotions, or terminations. She paused, letting it land. This isn't punishment. This is evolution. And those who can't grow, will be asked to go. Still, there was no applause. Just the silent dawning that the old world of Nordcrest was gone. But then, something happened that no one expected. Talia scanned the room and asked, "Is Camille still here?" There was a rustle near the third row. A young black woman in a slate-gray pantsuit stood slowly, unsure if she was being called out, or called forward. Talia stepped down from the makeshift stage and walked toward her. "Camille," she said, voice warm. "Yesterday, you came here to celebrate a promotion. You wanted to buy a reading chair to mark your success. And instead, you were discouraged. Shrugged off. Quietly dismissed." Camille nodded once, eyes brimming. "Yes. That shouldn't have happened," Talia said. "Not to you. Not to anyone." She gestured for Camille to walk with her. They moved toward the Mahler display, gleaming walnut frames and custom velvet cushions, the very same chairs Talia herself had asked about the day before. "Choose any model," she said gently. "Finish, fabric, cushion depth. It's on us." Camille gasped. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Talia said. "But if you're willing. I'd like to invite you to be featured in our next campaign. Not because of what happened. But because of who you are. You represent the very essence of what this brand should be: dignity, taste, success, and resilience." Camille nodded, unable to speak. Her silence said everything. Talia turned back to the staff. "Let me be clear," she said. "We don't sell furniture. We sell memory. We sell comfort. We sell belonging. And if this showroom can't deliver that, then it doesn't deserve to exist." A beat passed. And then she delivered the line that would later be printed, framed, and hung in every Nordcrest location across the country. "We don't just sell chairs. We sell the feeling that you belong. And that starts with the very first glance." The room didn't erupt. It didn't need to. There was something far more powerful than applause echoing through the air. It was belief. Later that afternoon, as the team quietly filed out of the impromptu realignment meeting, something had changed. No one was laughing. No one was whispering behind hands. The air inside Nordcrest felt different, like an old building after a controlled demolition. The same walls stood, but nothing inside them was untouched. Talia remained behind, walking slowly through the showroom she now saw with clearer eyes. She didn't just see chaise lounges and velvet sofas. She saw every dismissive glance, every fake smile, every decision made in polished shoes behind closed doors. She touched the arm of one of the Mahler chairs again, this time not as a test, but as a reckoning. This was the piece that started it. This was the item she'd asked about when they deemed her unworthy. Her phone buzzed. A message from her communications director. Media request coming in fast. Footages leaked. NYT wants comment. CNN Business 2. Talia exhaled. It had begun. The security footage, played just hours earlier in a closed staff circle, was now spreading like wildfire online. Someone had discreetly filmed the scene with Elliot. Another had recorded her speech to the staff. By mid-afternoon, it was on Twitter, then TikTok, then LinkedIn. One tweet had already hit 600,000 likes. They kicked a black woman in a hoodie out of a luxury showroom, and found out she owns the entire brand. CEO. Boss. Legend. Hashtag Talia Monroe. Hashtag know her name. Talia knew this wasn't just a public moment. It was a mirror. For every company, every brand, every person who thought bias could hide behind polish and price tags. Her assistant stepped into the room, holding a tablet. "We're trending," she said softly. "Your inbox is packed." Anne. HR flagged 10 former Nordcrest complaints from last year that never made it up the chain. Talia nodded. "Have legal pull them. Reopen all 10 cases. Start the outreach personally. I want every single one of those voices heard. Not with templates. With calls." The assistant blinked. "You're calling them yourself?" "Yes," Talia replied. "Because this brand needs to apologize with more than refunds." A pause. "And clear my schedule tomorrow." "For what?" "I want to visit every single Nordcrest location in Manhattan by the end of the week." The assistant's eyebrows lifted. "You're doing a tour?" "No," Talia said. "I'm doing a reckoning." By evening, news outlets were running the headline. Billionaire CEO humiliated by her own staff in furniture showroom, then fires everyone responsible. Clips of her calmly saying, "I'm the woman who signs your paychecks," played in every segment. Commentators debated whether her response was too harsh or long overdue. But the people, the ones who knew what it meant to walk into a store and feel less than, spoke loudest. The comments flooded in. "This story made me cry. I've lived this. Her grace under fire. That's what leadership looks like." She didn't just expose them. She educated them. Talia didn't need the praise. But she welcomed the awareness. The next morning, the Nordcrest inbox received over 4,000 applications. And more than half came from people who had once been afraid to walk into stores like it. Talia turned to her executive assistant again. "Open a new file," she said. "Initiative name, Project Open Door. What's the goal?" "Partnerships with trade schools. Scholarships for underrepresented designers. Hiring pipelines from communities we've ignored too long." "And the slogan?" Talia smiled for the first time in days. "Luxury. For all who dare to walk in." It took less than 48 hours for the Nordcrest headquarters to be transformed from a design brand into a national symbol of reckoning. Commentators debated it on morning news shows. Celebrities retweeted it. But for Talia Monroe, it wasn't about viral success. It was about doing what should have been done decades ago. By Friday, she had visited all 3 Nordcrest showrooms in Manhattan. She wore no press badge, brought no entourage. At each location, she walked in quietly, this time, not in a hoodie, but in an elegant blouse and slacks, and made direct eye contact with every employee. Some smiled, others panicked. No one knew what to expect. But what she gave them was an invitation. At each store, she called staff into a closed room and gave them space to speak. Not with rehearsed scripts or corporate pledges, but with honesty. Tell me, she said, what kind of workplace do you really walk into every morning? What do you feel when certain customers walk in? What's unspoken but enforced here? Some were honest. Others defensive. A few broke down in tears. One sales associate in Soho, a young Latina named Jasmine, told Talia something that stuck. We're trained to greet the people who look like money. That's the phrase they used in onboarding. And it always meant white, slim, well-dressed. Anything else, we're told to be polite but firm. Talia didn't interrupt. She just listened. Another woman, an immigrant designer from Ghana, said she hadn't been invited to the last 3 concept meetings, despite having 3 years of experience and a record of top-selling ideas. I was told my vision wasn't Nordcrest aligned, she whispered. I stopped speaking up. Talia wrote it all down herself. No assistants. No recording devices. Just pen and paper, like a student again. That night, back at her midtown office, she read every page and wept. Not from shame. From resolve. The following Monday, Monroe Atelier released a public statement unlike any the design world had seen. At Monroe Atelier, we believe luxury is not the furniture. It's how you're treated when you sit in it. What happened at Nordcrest Interiors was unacceptable, and it stops here. The message didn't just apologize. It declared war on silence. They announced a third-party audit of all stores and HR departments. A hotline for anonymous reports, reviewed weekly by external justice consultants. New mentorship programs to elevate talent from underserved communities. A revamped leadership ladder that included diversity metrics and lived experience, not just degrees and sales records. And most notably, Project Open Door was launched, with a $12 million initial investment. The press wanted interviews. Talia declined them all. Her only public words came through a short video posted on the company's channels, shot simply, seated at her desk. We will not fix what's broken by acting like it's a PR problem. This is personal. This is cultural. And if you're a customer, a designer, or someone who's ever been made to feel less than, know this, you deserve a place that sees you. Before your wallet. Before your wardrobe. You. The video went viral. In just 6 days, Nordcrest went from scandal to blueprint. Because Talia had turned a moment of humiliation into a masterclass in leadership. The final transformation came quietly, but permanently. 1 week after the incident, Nordcrest's flagship showroom reopened under a new banner. Not new branding, not a new logo, but a new energy. The building looked the same, but everything inside had changed. As customers entered, they were now greeted not just with soft jazz and subtle fragrance, but with intention. Staff smiled with sincerity. Hosts asked not what you could spend, but what you needed to feel at home. Designers leaned in when you spoke, listened without assumptions, and offered insights without condescension. A small plaque was now displayed beside the front door, engraved with a single quote from the woman who had rebuilt everything they thought they understood. Luxury is how you treat people, especially when you think no one's watching. Talia Monroe. But it wasn't just the staff who changed. It was the customers, too. They came in all forms now, richer in story than any fabric or wood grain. A single mother with her teenage son, saving to buy a couch for their first apartment. A black veteran who had always admired Nordcrest's style but feared the judgment. A young designer from Harlem, once told he'd never fit into the industry, now pitching his own custom line, on Nordcrest's dime. And standing at the center of it all, during a small event one Friday evening, was Camille. She sat in her new Mahler chair, deep green velvet with walnut arms, custom selected by her own hand. Around her, photographers snapped quiet pictures, capturing the moment. But Camille wasn't posing. She was simply reading. A copy of Audre Lorde's Sister Outsider rested in her lap. And across the room, Talia Monroe watched silently. Smiling. Because this was why she built Monroe Atelier in the first place. Not to sell furniture, but to build spaces where people felt like they mattered. Where no one had to wear status to receive respect. Where power didn't wear a name tag, it wore humility. Her assistant approached quietly. CBS wants to do a spotlight. Sunday morning segment. Your stories made its way into college classrooms, HR trainings, even government DEI seminars. Talia nodded but didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked over to Camille and gently asked, "May I sit?" Camille smiled. Of course. The two women sat together, side by side, in quiet triumph. No cameras. No speeches. Just presence. And for the first time since that stormy afternoon when she'd been thrown out of her own showroom, Talia allowed herself to breathe. Really breathe. Because the work wasn't done, but the foundation was finally right. This story reminds us, sometimes the most powerful voice in the room is the one that doesn't yell, but quietly rewrites the rules. Talia Monroe didn't fight back with rage. She fought back with vision. She took her humiliation and transformed it into a lesson, not just for her staff, but for all of us. The next time you think someone doesn't belong, ask yourself, what if they're the one signing your paycheck? Because real power doesn't wear gold. It wears grace. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. Like this video to spread awareness. Subscribe to True Echo to hear stories that challenge hearts and minds, and turn quiet strength into unforgettable truth.